Okay. So today, it's my understanding. Oh, and also I want to tell you that there's high contrast right here because the sun is just coming up through the smoke. So greetings from smoky California. And although it's not too bad, and much better than it was. And so our topic today is how can um, seclusion skills help us in isolation, or how can isolation help us with our seclusion skills? And I thought I'd expand that just a little bit into how can it help us with our sadhana in general. And so my thought is to spend my 15 minutes or so to say a few words here and kind of set the stage for everybody. And but then mainly what I'd love to do here is to have a discussion with you all, because there's way more than we could talk about in the time we have allotted. And so if we can go work off of questions from you, then that will help a great deal, because then we'll customize our time together for what you're interested in. And so I think the sun will move pretty soon, and I think we won't have this contrast problem, but I hope you can see me okay so far. Here we are in the very beginnings of Guaparayuga. Now, this is the very beginnings from a large standpoint. Guaparayuga, I believe, lasts for 2,500 years, and we're in the first 100 years of it. So we have solidly landed in Guaparayuga. So there's a change going on. And I believe the pandemic is part of that. And all of our efforts to isolate and to keep ourselves safe and to keep other people safe. Swami and Yogananda both talked a lot about changes between yugas. And I think some of you are more familiar, perhaps some of you are less familiar with what they've said about this. But in general, just to paint kind of a broad brush and set context here, whenever there's a change from one yuga to another, there can tend to be conflict. Swami Kriyananda used to say there's usually a war, not to scare us, but to give us some perspective on this and give us a chance to see things from a broader context. He said that the reason why is because the momentum of the previous yuga is very strong. It's like the changing of the seasons. You know, you have the longest day of the year, but it doesn't get really hot for a couple of months later. Same thing with wintertime. Same thing with the yugas. And so we have a situation where Kali Yuga ways where things were very fixed, very thought through. If you wanted to know the truth about something, you asked the Pope if it was a spiritual question, or you asked a local representative of the Pope, which was your village priest. And whatever that person said, that was the truth. And that's all there was to it. Very simple and very easy. In Guaparayuga now, and we're seeing this, Guaparayuga is the age of the individual, and it's the age of energy. And so a lot of energy is creating a lot of opportunity for a lot of information to come to us. How do we manage this? We've often heard people speaking from speaking for the group of our culture saying, well, you know, at this point, you're pretty much on your own to decide how it is that you're going to work with COVID-19. And I thought, oh my gosh, isn't anybody telling me anything? Well, people try, but it doesn't seem to be working very well. There's a lot of distrust in government and that sort of thing nowadays. Well, what I'm thinking is that this is part of the evolution of Guaparayuga, that the individual comes to the fore. And now we have people, individual rights are very, very important to us now. It just seems like it's an influence that's influencing all of us, no matter what level, area of the political spectrum we're on. So everybody is saying, hey, listen, I've got a right to make my own decisions about these things, which I think is very good. And I have a right to be upset if you tell me that I can't have that opinion. Well, that's important too, as far as it goes. But then there's another thing that comes from that, and Yogananda and Kriyananda were very strong on this, is individual responsibility. if we find ourselves in the midst of a mass of individuals, then how are we going to work with everybody else? How are we going to be responsible for the inspiration that we feel and the truth that we see? And how are we going to share that with our fellow beings? And so we're just in the very beginning of this new revelation in humanity, and we don't quite know how to deal with it yet. But I think that's where Yogananda's teachings and Kriyananda's teachings come in and help us with this. So I'm going to leave that at that point, and then move on to what can we do with seclusion, and what can we do with our sadhana during this time of largely of isolation, of self-protection, and so forth. It's interesting. I have found that I have had some very, very deep meditations lately. I have been in seclusion, or I have been taking, and these are maybe some suggestions I could make. For years and years, we have had a 3-hour meditation every Saturday morning at Ananda Village. We've had to pause that for COVID-19, during COVID-19, not having groups of people inside of buildings together. But I have continued to do it. And so I go out to my seclusion trailer in the backyard and have my 3-hour meditation every Saturday morning. And then once a month, one Saturday a month, I try to have an extended mini seclusion of 6 hours from 6 a.m. to noon. And I just had that not yesterday, but last week. And these things are very wonderful, and they get the busy Sudarshan mind calmed down and focused enough to where he can let go this apparent world and tune into the higher world that really is the source of this world, and the place where it would be better if we tune into. So those are some things. There's a lot of other things. Oh, I didn't mention. I think most of you may know, but some may not, that I did write a blog on ananda.org a few months ago that had to do with this very topic, how we can use seclusion skills to support our isolation and be more successful in our isolation during COVID-19. And so there's lots of handy hints that I gave in that blog. One of them is dealing with feeling isolated from other people. And that is the old saying, it hasn't changed: if you want friendship, be a friend. And Savitri and I have both found that during lockdown, so to speak, we're at least as busy visiting with people in one way or the other, online largely, or by telephone, by old-fashioned telephone, or by Zoom, than we were before. People are particularly disturbed, or not quite they don't know quite what to do. They're concerned, and they do feel lonely, and they need a friend. And by being a friend, then even though it seems like in the beginning you're putting out extra energy, it isn't true. Far more energy comes to you through that process than you individually expend as an individual, separate human being, which isn't really our orientation anyway. We're trying to be an infinite being. So be a friend. Be sure and pay attention to your sadhana. Keep it up. And I have also found, now I live in a rural environment, and I know that most of you live in an urban environment, and this is important. And it may be that I'm not catching into some of the things that you are trying to deal with. And so please use your questions to address that. But I find that I go out and visit with people on the hillside when it's not too smoky, and we just sit a little ways apart, and have a wonderful conversation. We have a cross breeze. We don't even wear masks, and we have a great opportunity to connect personally. Even physical touching, which is important. There's a real exchange of energy that happens with a hug or with just putting a hand on a shoulder or holding hands or whatever. That's important. And but it was an interesting thing. I tried an experiment in doing an air hug. And we found out that if we hold our arms out sideways, it's much better than mimicking holding your hands around somebody. If you expand your heart and the person is 6 feet away from you or 10 feet away from you, you really can feel a considerable amount of energy with that. So I mentioned that because a lot of people's concerns about isolation is that we just don't have that contact, that human contact. And it's not as good, in quotes, at least that's been my preliminary judgment. It's not as good as actual touching, but it definitely is real. And who knows, that begs the question that maybe we would begin to realize through that process this connection that which we all really have anyway, whether we're touching or not, through meditation and spiritually. So those are a few things. I have some notes here, and again, in the name of setting the stage for you all, I wanted to suggest some of these things. Oh, we have some friends in Los Angeles who live in an apartment complex and in an urban environment. And in the backyard was a disused area. The backyard of the apartment complex was really just kind of a breezeway. And Vajrini decided she was going to make an outdoor space there during the pandemic. And so she got some plants and she got a couch, an outdoor couch to sit down on. She even put a pool there. And then the landlord told her that she had to get that out because of insurance reasons. But it was just a very small pool. And she made an outdoor environment. She had a little fountain with trickling running water. And it was a wonderful place to meditate. And it was a wonderful outdoor spot. And this brings up the thought that when you are doing seclusion, when you are doing your spiritual practices, it's good to have a holy place, a place that's just special that you just use for that. And you can use your altar in your house, but if there's a way that you can have an outdoor place that works and isn't hazardous and is comfortable, then it can be very nice. And I do that in my normal seclusions. Now, I realize I'm not talking about seclusion per se yet, but I think I'm going to leave that to questions because there's so much to say about it. I could do an outline of a normal seclusion, but I think it might be better for us to see what you all are interested in in that aspect. Regularity of your practices. Keep up the regularity of your practices and deepen them too if you can. I found that it's easier to keep to a regular schedule for me and for my situation. It may be that you're working, sometimes the parents are even more busy now than they were before. Our school principal just told me that the parents are so happy that the school is back in session now. So I think that that's an important thing. And so life is different for different people. Participate in the Warrior for Light that happens every Thursday morning through ananda.org. We are all warriors of light. Right now in this transition between Kali Yuga and Guaparayuga, there is a strong energy of divisiveness and of various kinds of trouble in our society. This is temporary. It's part of a purification. People asked Yogananda, will everybody die? Is this the end of the world? And Yogananda said, oh no, it's just a purification. It's an opportunity for to overcome greed and selfishness in humanity. And so people are getting that opportunity, and it will be very interesting to see how that works out. If you want to talk more about what the predictions were that Yogananda made and so forth, we can do that. I got out my notes from the road ahead and from some of the other resources that we have on that score. Talk with a minister. Try to make a connection with somebody who you feel can help you in your evolution, and that you feel that you can ask questions of. And it may be 2 or 3 people. One person might be good for one thing, one person might be good for another. So, but try to make those connections and have those ways of sharing inspiration and sharing light. That can be so, so important. So I think I'm going to let it go at that, because I'd like to meet all of you and see all of you if I can, and hear from you. Now, I should mention also that I don't know how this is going to work. It may be that I can see people actually asking questions, then I can respond to that directly. If there are comments that come in on the sidebar, I do have that up, but I'm not sure how they're going to show up. So Supriya, if you could help me with this, that I don't want to have any questions scroll down and get lost. So if I'm not answering something that somebody has asked, please let me know. Okay, so the sun is still doing its thing, but I think maybe you can at least hear me a little bit. I see me a little bit. Okay,
we can definitely see you. So anybody who wants to open cameras, go ahead and do it. I'd like to say in the chat box, Mayatri has already put the link to your blog on the ananda.org website.
Okay.
So that'll be really fun. And I'm sure that's a lot of what was in the booklet that you wrote many years ago.
Oh, yes, in the Seclusion booklet.
I've
Yeah.
seen that.
Yeah.
So let me just start with this, just briefly, and then we're going to open it up. So, because I've talked with different people, and, we all have our sadhana time.
Mm-hmm.
And if we decide in home to take a seclusion, maybe sadhana is an hour and a half, or whatever. What would you suggest if we wanted to expand that regular sadhana that we're doing to, let's just say, 3 hours? Because this is pretty practical. These are all homeowners, some have kids, some have jobs. And so if we had expanding to a 3-hour, just little suggestions of what in addition to do.
Okay. What I would say is use this opportunity as a way of pushing your envelope just a little bit. If you're used to doing 48 kriyas, within 3 hours, you can easily do 108. And you may already have a schedule where you do try to do 108 every so often, but do try to do that. And then pay attention to the peaceful after effects of meditation, as Yogananda called it. Once you've finished your sadhana, Divine Mother is sneaky, I found out. And she doesn't necessarily announce her presence with a big banner in front of her. Very often she's just there ever so subtly in the back of your consciousness. So when you calm down after you have done your spiritual practices, and I'm speaking to Kriya Bonds, if you have not taken Kriya, then do the meditation practices that you're used to. And then try to spend that time. You've pushed the envelope, you've tried to do more than you're usually used to. If you're usually used to doing 108 kriyas, then try doing 2 sets. You can do that in 3 hours. I've done it. You don't want to be doing your meditation practices all the time. Again, this peaceful after effects is very important. This is the time when your consciousness is uplifted. It's almost like your consciousness gets on an elevator and it goes up, 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 and it floats up One time I rode in a hot air balloon. It was the only time I ever did. And we were talking and I wasn't paying attention. All of a sudden we were up off the ground. And I looked down, I said, my goodness, we're way up in the sky. And what it was the acceleration of our rising was so gradual that I never noticed it. It's the same with meditation. Your consciousness will rise and you won't necessarily know it. And so it's good to allow God, Divine Mother, Master to work through that and transform you. Another aspect to this is that the divine is working with you at all times, whether you know it or not. Most of the time we don't know it, at least if I'm any example of that. Most of the time I have had no clue what was going on. But still, God is working. I point towards the head because that's the nervous system. But it's total body in a sense. It's and beyond the body, your basic consciousness is being transformed. And when you come to realize that through various ways, through your journaling, through inspirations that you feel and so forth, or just because your life seems to be going better right now, then you start to get a feel for how this process is working. So getting more specific into that idea of 3 hours, let's just say that you'll find that 3 hours goes away pretty quick, but spend some time in your invocation. If you have gotten into the point where you have gotten into an automatic praying zone, is what I call it, when you say your prayer to begin, it's always good to do the invocation to the masters. I found myself saying, Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji, Krishna. I was trying to get through it because I wanted to get on to business. Okay. Well, I found out later on that it's much more real when I say Divine Mother to visualize Divine Mother and wait until she nods and says yes. When I say Sri Yukteswar, see him and feel his presence and wait until he nods and says, yes, you have my attention. That can be kind of scary a little bit, but it's also very good because you are really communing with these souls who are right here. They really are. And they will commune with you. And so take a little bit of time. You don't have to feel, when you're in your 3 hour meditation, you don't have to feel like you got to get anywhere, at least until 3 hours is up. You've also made a deal with your kids that you're not going to be disturbed during that time, that they can jump on you at 3 hours and 1 second, but up to 3 hours, you've got your sanctuary. You've also hopefully set aside a space, a holy space that you can be in during this time, which I hope you have for your meditation room anyway. But do that invocation and then feel the presence of the masters and then really do your kriyas or your spiritual practices with intention. Try to be more conscious about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you'll find that the divine says, okay, good. Now we can get to work. And you'll feel that the divine joins in with you. And so just those experiences during this time when you can spend some extra time and tune in a little bit more, I think you'll find that they fire up your enthusiasm. Your inner spiritual warriors get thrilled. They feel like they've got some support, and then you'll find that next time your 3 hour meditation comes up, you'll want to get to it. This will be really a thrill for you, and that's a very good thing. So I hope that helps. That's just some thoughts.
Okay, people know how to unmute their mics one at a time. So does anybody want to say something? I'm watching the chat box.
Hi, Sudarshan.
Hi.
So good to see you.
Good to see
Welcome
you guys too.
in Texas. I was intrigued by what you were saying about, Dwapara and the changing of the yugas. And I wondered if you could expound a little bit more on that concept of, yes, it's good for us to be, to feel strong in our individualism, in our connection, individual connection to God, etc. But then you also said the flip side of it being individual responsibility as well. And maybe how does that concept work within, like our spiritual family? I mean, we that's our whole thing is, teaching and sharing with people how they can connect with God individually. That they don't have to go through the priest or whatever, but it's also there's that whole balance in the purpose of satsang, right? So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay, I think you'd relate to this, being a minister yourself. One thing that that has stopped me several times in my efforts to speak with people is that I felt like I have a tremendous responsibility to represent Yogananda and Kriyananda and God in the most pure and most unprejudiced way that I possibly can. Now, that doesn't mean that I always succeed, but at least I need to try. And so that's where I feel like, okay, I felt this responsibility is to share as clearly as possible what it was that Swami said or what that Yogananda said, and what I feel the inspiration is that's coming through this being. Okay, and one of the ways that I've tried to watch this is when I feel a personal investment happening in anything that I'm saying. It's an idea that I really like, for instance, or it's an axe that I have to grind, or something like that. I feel like, well, if I feel like any of that kind of thing is going on, I want to disqualify myself or step back a little bit. So that's one aspect or one way that I could answer what you're saying is that I need to be very careful about taking responsibility for how I put out the energy of the inspiration that I feel. Although I feel like because Dwapara is coming in, because of the various things that Swami and Yogananda have said, is that individual expression of inner communion is very important nowadays. So how do I do that as far as satsang goes? I think satsang is very, very important. And by the way, I got to say, largely, I really don't know the answer to your question, because I think that we're all feeling our way now at this time, and it's a time of great confusion. So I'm just saying, I don't think I have a system put together that will help you understand what it is I'm trying to say, because I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say myself. But I am feeling these impulses. And I think one of them has to do with friendship, with being a true divine friend to the people around me. And if I can do that in a group, I know that Swami was able to do that. I feel like that's happened sometimes with moderate-sized groups that I've led as well, is that there's a feeling of divine friendship that we are not speaking, I as Sudarshan am not speaking as Sudarshan primarily. I'm trying to speak as inspiration, and I'm trying to cooperate with the inspiration which is coming in and from everybody in the group, each individual. And so again, we have this Guaparayuga individualism again, is that, and Swami used to speak to this. He said he would very, very carefully pay attention to somebody in the group who raised a hand or wanted to say something. And very often I remember I was in groups when somebody would do this, And they were somebody who hadn't been on the spiritual path at all, maybe didn't even know how to meditate. They're asking what I considered to be a silly question. Okay. And Swami would just lock right onto that person, and he would listen extremely carefully to every word they said. And then it was very interesting. He would find, and I don't think he was digging, I think he simply saw some level of inspiration that was coming through that person. And then he would feed that back, not just to that person, but to the group. And he, in a way, he was drawing forth from that person wisdom, divine wisdom. But just having, perhaps for us, maybe a little rule we could have is just realize that God is in everybody. And God is a conscious force. The God that is in all of us is working together through all of us to help us all tune into something that is a truth that perhaps we couldn't get a hold of if it weren't for that silly question from that one person. Okay, we might, as a group, find something that came through that silly person, in quotes, who isn't really a silly person at all. In meditation, also, we can reinforce this. I came to an understanding, I think, perhaps that's a way of saying it, perhaps through meditation, that when I approach another human being, it's as if I'm approaching, to use a natural example, as if I'm approaching the edge of the Grand Canyon. If anybody, if you all have been to the Grand Canyon, perhaps you know, you drive across this kind of rolling expanse of desert, and finally you come to this incredibly vast hole in the earth. It's unbelievable. It is beyond awe-inspiring. It is staggering. You stand on the edge of that, and it's just impossibly huge. It's beyond belief. At least that's been my experience of it. I have found that standing before another human being is often an experience kind of like that. If you can step back, get away from the personality, and step back and see the divine within them, and or at least attempt to tune into the divine within them, it tends to open up into these vast expanses. Their soul is so much different than their outward expression as a personality. I found that true with myself too. And I think you all have found the experience of when you get to know someone well, you all of a sudden find out you don't know them at all. And they surprise you tremendously because all of a sudden whole new worlds open up and that you never even knew were there. So this is, I think, is a manifestation of this truth. So how to put all that together, I'm not sure. How to put that together as a minister, or how to put that together in the way we work, I'm not sure. But I think keeping those things in mind in our Sangha, you all have a wonderful group where you all support each other. Also, by the way, I should add prayer, and the fact that we can connect with people from a great vast distance. Physical distance really doesn't matter as far as communication and connection with people, I think ultimately anyway. And so we can tune in with people. I've had the experience of when I'm praying for different people, sometimes I'll be going down my healing prayer list and all of a sudden I'll get a draw on one name. One name all of a sudden is pulling something out of me. I think, huh, what? What's that? What's this all about? One time I got a pretty strong impression about somebody and I called up somebody who knew them and I said, are they going through a particularly interesting time right now? And the person said, how did you know? And I said, well, I didn't know, but God knew. And I think God gave me a hint. So we can tune in. So I think I've gone on a little bit long on that one, but let's see what else we got.
Okay, here's one from the chat box. It says, during a multi-day seclusion, Is it okay to work on a non-spiritual creative project, like writing?
Uh-huh. Okay, I think I think that's a complicated question, and I think the answer might be absolutely yes and absolutely no. So, and here I'll try to expand on that a little bit. Um, First of all, you might think and you might consider, okay, what am I doing this seclusion for? Why have I tuned into this? Why am I doing this? I think I'd better really focus on the, in quotes, spiritual stuff as much as I can. Now, I've taken that approach several times with things, when I was considering doing something that attracted me or that I felt was a good thing to do. And I have been very successful with that. There have been times when I have not been successful looking at it that way. Sometimes God is trying to come through that creative project or that creative writing project in this example. And I have found that journaling, for instance, in seclusion is absolutely wonderful. I will be meditating and I'll get an inspiration. And inspiration comes in feeling, in my experience. It's a feeling which then translates into words. And sometimes I'll have a flash of inspiration. I sit down with my journal and I write for hours. Now tell me how all those words got encapsulated in that tiny little moment of inspiration. Well, inspiration is eternal. It's connected with an eternal reality. And so, of course, all those words can be connected in that very much more. So it's a sensitive thing to tune into how Divine Mother is working through you in your seclusion. Okay? And the only way that I can answer that, I think, effectively probably, is to say, look, the way that I've learned the difference between these things is to just try it one way and see how far I get. Try it the other way, see how far I get. Accumulate experience. I have found, like I say, in both cases, I have found that I have fallen off the horse, so to speak, pursuing both different directions. But I think a better way to answer that would be to say, talk with Divine Mother about it. Talk with Yogananda about it. Say, when you have that inspiration to do this creative writing in your seclusion, hold it up to the spiritual eye, hopefully after you've meditated for a little while. Dedicate some time to meditating for a little while. Hold it up to the spiritual eye and ask Yogananda about it. And say, would it be better for me to really focus on my meditation techniques and have a longer meditation this morning? Or would it be better for me to follow up on this writing, or both? What do you think? And very often, especially when we're not used to this, after a while we'll get used to it to where we can ask that question and we'll get a pretty clear answer. But for a long time, I'd ask and all I got was blank, okay? And so Swami suggested a technique, which I think might be helpful for everybody on this level, especially when you're facing a fork in the road. Should I do this or should I do that? He said, again, meditate, get calm. First of all, ask the question, but if you don't feel any clear answer, then do this. Visualize what would happen when you take the right-hand fork of the road, for instance. You make one decision. Visualize it as best you can, as clear as you can. Hold it up to the spiritual eye and feel how it feels in the heart. And then put it back down again. Visualize the other alternative. Hold it up the best you can at the spiritual eye. See how it feels in your heart. I've been very surprised at how that came out. And I won't go too much into the specific example, but I have found that very often what I wanted to do, what I felt was right, was not where I felt the best energy. And so, and when I have followed the best energy, I have found that it worked really, really well. So anyway, there's that.
Okay, who wants to unmute their mic and comment or ask a question directly? If not, I got stuff to say. You know that.
Do it, you guys, do it.
All right. So I'm going to first say that someone wrote when you were talking about the Grand Canyon view, the vastness, and it was very powerful, by the way. I have seen it, but when you said that, someone wrote, "That's a beautiful analogy. Thank you."
Mm-hmm.
So
Good.
someone
Thank
put
you.
that in the chat box.
Okay.
And then I'm going to toss this in because this is something I believe it was from your dear wife, Nayaswami Savitri. When I go to Ananda Village, you all know I go every year. I always do a seclusion. It could be any length of time. Longer, better is good for me. But I asked Savitri, and you sometime too, it's like, all right, I'm getting ready to go into seclusion. Any input? I just kind of open that up.
Mm-hmm.
One time, this is what Savitri told me, and I do it all the time now, on a multi-day seclusion, literally after meditation, maybe in the afternoon, after lunch, or a little meditation lunch, and then I sit and I make a list very slowly, see who Divine Mother brings to mind, of people I'm going to specifically pray for every day. So the list grows. The first day I might have 20, 25 names. And I do it like, okay, my spiritual family in Ananda Dallas or Ananda Worldwide. Then I do my biological family. And then I do friends. This is how it's evolved for me. And then this list, every day I sit and pray, just not in words, not a lot of words, just energy to this soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it. And then sometime that day, I have to open up to Divine Mother. Or any more names? Did I forget anybody? Oh, my cousin Karen. I haven't thought of her in years. Okay, Karen's going on my list.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I do in a multi-day seclusion that's cumulative, and it grows and wonderful. And I thank Savitri for that suggestion.
Well, getting into multi-day seclusions, that's something that I haven't really spoken to people about too much because very few people do it. And I'm very glad you brought that up. I would love to see more people doing that sort of thing. And I'd love to talk with more people who are doing it. As some of you may know, I take a month every year. And so I've gotten into quite a long-term rhythm with it. And I'm a little scared of talking about that because I want people to have a successful time if they're just taking a weekend or just a day and a half or something like that. But as the longer term goes on, one thing I realized was I wanted to pray for everybody. So I took the Ananda phone list, and being a mathematically organized kind of a guy, I would count up the number of names on it and divide up how many per day. And so I usually had about 13 per day. And it was wonderful to be able to just go right through and pray for everybody that I knew. And then I'm like you, a lot of times I think of other people who I know who aren't at Ananda Village, of course, and then I'll add them in too as time goes on. I also took the anniversary list for a while and started praying for people on their anniversaries too. But whatever works for you is good. Another thing, again, along the lines of what the lady was talking about, I believe it was a lady who was talking about writing during seclusion. I have a particular interest in nature. And so I usually when I start my seclusion, I have a little ceremony. And you don't have to have an interest in nature to do this, but when I stand outside my seclusion trailer, I face the four directions and do a little ceremony, and then a little bit like an arati. And then I will pray, and in my opening prayer, I will do the invocation to all the masters, but then I'll include all the human beings who have ever set foot here in the last 100,000 years. All the deer and the bear and the cougars and the coyotes and the possums and the mice and the rats, and and after a while I'm going, and then I get all into all the plants, and so I've gotten into quite a long prayer. Well, this all has to do with nature. Well, I have found that as time, I feel that the nature spirits in the surrounding area, because I'm in a natural location normally, to kind of tune in, and they help me out with my seclusion. They're enthusiastic, why not? They're astral. They are spiritual beings as well. That doesn't mean they're realized, as Swami says, but they are there and they will communicate with you. So, and that is helpful. That's not something that I would recommend to everybody, but it's something I'd recommend if you have that interest. If you have an interest in music, you might bring, like Linus and Peanuts, you might bring your statue of Beethoven and your statue of Mozart along with you and tune into them. And Swami said often, tune into those minds. Remember that time is not what we consider it to be. Mozart is available to us. His consciousness and his vibration is available to us. And ultimately, we can see him and talk with him. I believe that Yogananda did that. So anyway, I don't want to go too far into that, but that's another part of this gigantic world that opens up to you in seclusion. So I saw Mike appear, and hi, Mike.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Hi, Sudarshan. I have a question, if you like.
Okay.
Nice to see you, and thanks for sharing the time with us today. It's very important for all of us. Now, the aura strengthening exercises were taught to us by Savitri a few years ago, and then Maitri gave aura strengthening class a month ago or so. And so I've been doing all the aura strengthening exercises every day since I learned them from Savitri, and I do them after energization. And I was wondering if you think that's a good sequence, a good time for that.
Okay. Now I have to plead ignorance, even though my wife has been doing this. I can imagine one of the aura strengthening exercises might be saying Om Tat Sat and running the hands around your body. Would that be good?
That's an example. And then there's a lot of other ones, or there might be a mantra like the Om Ring Kling Krishnaya Namaha. So various things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I think I understand, and that's particularly helpful when we are facing energies that tend to draw us down. Confusion, disinformation, negativity, and that sort of thing that some people are a lot of people are retreating into because it gives them more of a sense of control and so forth. And it's not just people, it's an energy. And I should mention this too, that Swami and Yogananda also talked about Satan and about a conscious negative force, which is trying to pull us down. And I think that's probably what you're trying to do, Mike, is to have a regular practice of strengthening that positive energy inside of yourself and that's coming through you to counteract that and not to be affected by that so much. And that's absolutely wonderful. As far as placement, I think that when do you do your energization exercises? Do you do them before you meditate in the morning or afterwards?
Oh, I do them. That's like the first thing. I do them first. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. It's an interesting thing, and I'll just throw this out. I'm not suggesting that you do something different, but Swamiji at one point, and I don't know whether he continued this his whole life, but he did say at one point, he said that he likes to do the energization exercises after he meditates in the morning and before he meditates in the evening. And he said that he felt that it was a good transition between his meditational life and his daily energy life, his outward expressing energy life. So that might be a clue. I tend to be more like you, and I try to do the energization exercises before I meditate in the morning. And for me, partly it just gets me awake. They're tremendously awakening. So I would think that that's a nice time. The one thing that pops in my mind is that it reminds you to do them, the aura strengthening exercises, because you just get into a habit of doing it at that time. So other than that, I don't know. Now, the one thing that Swami did mention with that, you didn't mention, but probably you know, is that if you feel a particular challenge, uh, uh, whenever it happens, feel free to do your aura strengthening whenever you need to. If you feel the negative entity is trying to get to you, or you feel like your thoughts are going in a negative direction or something like that, you can just pop those in and feel them working. So other than that, I'm not quite sure what to say.
No, that's great. That's just what I was hoping for. I appreciate what you said about what Swami's idea was. That is a good point about
Yeah.
transitioning, from meditation. You already sleep, so yeah, it's an idea. I'll think about that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I actually, to tell you the truth, I don't have personal experience putting it into practice. I'm kind of a guy that just gets into a practice and just keeps doing it. So I've been more of the before meditation in the morning guy too.
I also liked a lot what you said. I liked a lot what you said about the nature and communing with nature. And fortunately, with the virus, I have established an outdoor nature spiritual place, which I was always just inside. But since I'm home a lot now, I've got a particular area back there where I guide my wife with yoga, and it's beautiful.
Great. Just a little spot underneath the tree. Just a little spot where two bush branches come out and make a little alcove, in the bushes. Anything like that. You begin to, I don't know whether you're investing in it with spiritual energy or whether you're simply awakening and allowing the energy that's there to be awakened and to become real. But it really can be quite powerful. So.
Wonderful.
Okay. Does anybody else have? By the way, I'll say I'm particularly enjoying talking with individuals here. So anyway, if anybody else wants to come on and say something, let me know.
Hi, Sudarshan. Mark Smith also here in Austin. You touched on a little bit where you talked about the Yugas, which has always been a favorite subject of mine, but also I've not read The Road Ahead, and so you talked a little bit about that, and I wonder if you could give us just a little bit more about the times we're in. I mean, it's a really tough. It's been a tough year, so
sure.
And it's easy to get really drawn into the things that are going on in the world and get too stressed out about that. So I wonder if you could expound on that a little bit more on what Master said about this period.
Sure. Regarding the roadhead itself, just so that people know, it's a little booklet almost that Swami wrote originally in the 70s. And then a little bit more, I think he revised it slightly, maybe in the 80s or maybe in late 70s, I'm not sure. Unfortunately, it's out of print. Supriya, do you know if there's an existing copy of it somewhere in Texas?
Not that I am aware of.
We do have it in the library, and it is, I believe, offered on Crystal Clarity as a download or a ebook or whatever.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure at Crystal Clarity they have it as an ebook now, and I'm pretty sure we have it in our library, but our library is currently in storage. So
yeah. Okay. Well, just to get that out of the way, it sounds like it's feasibly possible to get. And what it was Swami felt like it was very important to write down all, he collated together all the different predictions that Yogananda made that he heard and added in some of his own interpretations as best he could, because a lot of times Master just said a few things. He just said something in passing, and yet it seemed pretty momentous. I have my little cheat sheet because I went through it one day, and that, and also SRF had a little booklet, a very tiny booklet called World Crisis that they printed back in the 90s, which was actually just a transcript of a talk that Yogananda gave, and has a few quotations from Master about that. But I think I mentioned at one point that Master said something to the effect of, you don't know what a terrible cataclysm is coming. Okay. He said, millions will die. That's a pretty big one. He said, and then somebody said, the economy will be very bad. Money will not be worth the paper it's printed on. Okay. These are pretty strong statements. Okay. And Swami tried to grapple with this and make sense of this. Swami often was encouraging us to take common sense steps, and Yogananda also. Yogananda's primary common sense step was get together with other devotees. And he also said, buy land in the country and create a spiritual community, which is what you guys are doing. You don't have the land in the country part together, but Ananda has done that a lot in a lot of places, and grow your own food and that sort of thing. He was obviously looking forward to a time of social disruption. Okay, I also mentioned the quotation where somebody was listening to him say that, and they said, well, is the world ending? And Master said, oh no, it's just a purification. It's a purification because human beings have gotten far too much into selfishness and greed, and that needs to be purified. One aspect that I used to think of was, Swami also said something, which is not in my notes, but I think is helpful here. He said that he went to a psychic one time, a psychic person. Oops, and I think, Supriya, we're getting close to end of our time. What should I do about that before I go forward?
If you're okay, and we have 18 people online,
Okay.
feel free to go a little longer.
Okay, I'm okay and you're okay. So, so here we go. Getting back to the story of Swami, he went to a psychic, and he said, you know, you have to take psychic connections advisedly, and sometimes psychics are more accurate and sometimes less. But he said that he felt a real connection with what this particular psychic said, at least this particular thing that he said. And he said that many souls are being attracted to Earth right now because of the tremendous spiritual opportunity for spiritual growth that is coming on this planet at this time. Many souls are being born on Earth. Well, you know, that makes sense to me because we've had a population explosion on Earth. We've got a lot of people here, and more than the Earth, historically anyway, that we know of, has ever sustained. And so, and of course, I thought when I heard this back in the 70s, oh, this is wonderful. Think of all the saints who are being attracted to the Earth. And there'll be saints meditating on every street corner. This will be just wonderful. And later on, as I sort of perhaps matured spiritually a little bit, I thought about I revisited this idea again, and I thought, now, wait a minute. We're all potential saints, even those of us who have quite a long ways to go in our spiritual development, okay? And so it may well be, everybody has karma. Maybe many people have very material karma, having to do with selfishness, having to learn that selfishness doesn't really work. Okay, and they need the experiences to go through to understand that selfishness doesn't work. Okay, when you think of it from this standpoint, you might be thinking that there's an awful lot of people coming to the Earth who have some spiritual lessons to learn. And they're not necessarily lessons that they're going to learn in an ashram at the foot of a guru. They may be spiritual lessons that they're going to learn in a war or in a great social conflagration of some sort. So then I thought, oh, okay, well, that's very interesting. And of course, I'm sure this was in Swami's mind, but he didn't make this clear at the time. Okay, so getting back to the question about the roadhead and what this was, I think this is it. I can read off a few more quotations quoted out of the roadhead, but let me try to encapsulate the whole thing. Now, Master said another thing. He said that there would be two more world wars. There'd be a World War III and a World War IV. And he also said, very interestingly, that World War III would happen at the end of the 20th century. I don't think that something that could be characterized as World War III has happened at the end of the 20th century. Now, I think somebody asked Swami about that, and I don't remember what he said, but I do think that I have heard him speak on these lines, that when a sage like Swami, like Master, looks forward, and please take this with a grain of salt, this is not what Swami said, this is my best interpretation of this, is that they are looking at energy fields and probabilities, and things can be changed. Divine Mother, talking to the visionaries at Medjugorje, said that one of the great purifications, I'm using that term, that wasn't the word that Divine Mother used, or that Mother Mary used, one of the secrets had been mitigated, was completely not going to happen through the prayers of people like the visionaries and other good people on earth. Okay, so yeah, our future is not set in stone. Okay, we can change it, and this is another thing where I believe folks who are devotees of Yogananda, who we are all, have a tremendous role to play in real, sincere, deep inner communion and prayer. We have no idea. As Master said when someone was walking with him and they came upon Rajasi Janakananda meditating on the grounds of Encinitas. And he said, "Oh, hush, let's not disturb him. You have no idea what good comes to the work." And I think he meant what good comes to the world, when just one person can meditate that deeply. And don't think that when you make your try at your 3-hour seclusion, you're just doing that for yourself, next weekend. You really are connected with every being on the planet and beyond. And the communion that you have, whether you recognize it or not, is having an effect, and perhaps a very big effect, on what's going on all around the world. So, so anyway, that's what we can do about all this stuff. I think that's a way of looking at some of these predictions. I think that what's happening is that we do have a purification to go through. I asked Savitri, okay, what are Jyotish and Devi saying now? Are we in it or are we not? I remember a few months ago, Jyotish said something along the lines of, well, this may be it, this may not be what Yogananda was talking about. Savitri said, well, my thinking is that they're more leaning towards, yeah, we think this is it. And that's been my opinion too. I had an experience with the nature spirits in my last seclusion where it seemed like they were talking to me about it, and they seemed to be indicating that too. Again, whether that's true or not, I don't know. That's a personal experience. But I think that we are entering into this time, which has been predicted since time immemorial, which Master said also in the road ahead, I believe he was quoted, saying devotees will be protected. Now, what protected means is I don't know that they'll be sent off to a nice verdant tropical paradise island where they won't have to worry about it. I don't think that's what protected means. I think protected means more that when a natural consequence of a disturbance would probably roll over you too in your apartment in Dallas, or in your or me in my house at Raniket Cluster, that somehow something would happen. History is full of these kind of situations where General Rommel is rolling with his tanks over an area, and and a goat walks across the road, and Rommel likes goats and he doesn't want to run over it, and so he takes a detour and runs his entire army about 2 miles to the west. Okay, and the people who were right in the way of being crushed by the tanks were spared. I think it's kind of more like that's the way that Divine Mother seems to work with this kind of thing. And it's not like you avoid your divine responsibility, do everything you possibly can to bring positivity into the world. It's that you just are preserved so that you can do it more. Perhaps that's what it is. Okay, so I know we're running over time, but I'm here for as long as you guys want, or at least for a considerable time longer.
So I want to throw this out there that
Okay.
to challenge anyone, I don't need to know about it, challenge ourselves to have in this next coming week a 3-hour meditation. Now,
Very good.
whether that means I do 108 or not Kriyas, because everyone online is not a Kriyaman. So maybe it's do Hong Sa in the spine, do your own technique, do whatever, but a little bit more enjoy. And then for me, what I like to do also is have a book, but I don't want to move a whole lot from my sacred area. So I will select a book, either Yogananda's words or Swami's words, whichever one Divine Mother tells me. That goes with me when I'm going to seclude, and I keep it very nearby. And then, okay, I'm done meditating, Mother, but let's read. And then I read from the book that's been calling to me, and then maybe pray. And so, I mean, like you say, it's very easy to fill 3 hours. And I just want to say, don't everybody think you have to do 108 Kriyas, because that's very intimidating for some people, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But and I love your idea of sitting outside. Most of us are looking for opportunities to go outside, sit on your patio, on your sidewalk, on your front porch. Just open your front door and step out and sit and look at nature and let the devas talk to you. I mean, I love that, and I do that on my patio because I got to get out of this house.
Yeah. Savitri has a giant mosquito net, and when she meditates outside, she'll throw that huge puffy mosquito net over her, and she can meditate just fine, and the bugs won't bother her, and everything works out all right. There was one time she was down at the river and she was meditating away, and she heard this, I think you've heard this, Supriya, but I don't think everybody has. She heard this kind of commotion going on in the blackberry bushes nearby her, and it was a bear, and the bear was harvesting blackberries. And the interesting thing was the bear had absolutely no concerns about her being within probably 8 feet of it. And I think it was because she was meditating. And she finally realized that there was a blackberry bush behind her with a lot of blackberries on it. And very soon the bear would be standing on her shoulders trying to get the blackberries. And so she figured she'd probably better do something about it. And so she stood up and said hello. And all of a sudden the bear got terrified and nearly fell over and took off running across the rocks down there by the river. And it was like the bear all of a sudden came to the idea that there was actually a human here that was something different. But I thought that was very interesting that the bear Savitri was so much in harmony that the bear wasn't concerned about her at all in the beginning. I don't know where I got off on that, but anyway, the one thing about and I didn't really talk. I'm sorry I didn't talk about seclusion that much. Yes, you have to play your mind like a fish. Swami used to say. You know how a fisherman will hook a 20-pound fish on 5-pound test line. And it's not a great thing for vegetarians, but it does work. And if he just tried to reel the fish in, he'd break the line, okay? But what you do is you let the fish run, and then when the fish, swims towards you, you reel it all back in again, and then, when it runs again, it runs, and finally it tires out, and finally you can get your net and pick it up and pull it into the boat. he said, do that with your mind too. And don't be overawed or over intimidated by people who say, oh yeah, just do about 3 times 108, you'll be great. You know, if you feel resistance in your mind, try to overcome that, but work with your mind. I have found that working with my inner tendencies, almost as if, in fact, the Bhagavad Gita uses this simile, as if you're the king or the queen, and those inner tendencies are your court of ministers. And if they are rebellious, then say, oh, well, I respect you very much. I want you to have your way too. Let's go with what you want to do for a while, you know, and let them run for a little bit. And then bring them gradually back again. And eventually, I have had talks with some of my inner tendencies, my rebellious tendencies, and I've said, okay, now look, we said that we were going to meditate longer. Now what's going on? How come you're rebelling? You say, well, I don't like it. I got a lot better things to do than meditate. And I'll say, well, you remember the last time when we talked and you agreed that we could meditate for 2 hours straight? And he said, and he'll say, yeah, I remember. And he said, remember how good that was? You said it was really good. He says, yeah, you're right. And I say, you think we could do that this time? He says, all right, boss, I'm with you. But we've got to be able to go play too. And say, okay, I promise that we'll play later on. You know, I'm going to make a time. I got to set the alarm on my watch, and we're going to have time to play. But for now, we're going to concentrate. And sometimes it works really well. I mean, work with your inner tendencies. So, but anyway, also, I think what Supriya was saying was very true, is do what you can, push it as you can, but also do some other things that Divine Mother may be inspiring you to do. And picking up something by Yogananda, I can't tell you how many times I have cracked a book open to a selection by Yogananda, and it spoke to exactly what I needed to hear. I mean, it's unbelievable. Either Man's Eternal Quest or several, Anandi put together the various Yogananda series, the series of quotes by Yogananda. Let's see, Essence of Self-Realization is like that, short quotes, unbelievable. So anyway, wonderful.
Sudarshan, I just want to add a couple things to that too. When Supriya mentioned, the 108 and all that, the way I've worked some with my tendencies is, some days I just go, okay, if I'm going to have that block of time and I can't do 108, but I'm taking a, longer block of time, is I'll do so many and then I will do something else and then come back and do more, and, so I split it up, and that actually helps, real efficient, so to speak. And then I was just thinking this morning, I guess I haven't been energizing outside lately. I don't know. Well, it's just started now to get nice here again in the mornings and stuff. But anyway, I was out this morning, and it's an amazingly beautiful morning out there. And we just started doing our Raja Yoga class series again. And Mark teaches that, and he was really, we were all listening very closely to what he was saying about visualizing. And I'm always looking for new ways to be very present, because it's true with energization that you can get real rote with that, just like anything, but energization in particular, it seems like. So being outside, and I could hear my husband's voice about his visualizations, and then I just started to really feel like I was doing energization with those nature spirits, with the prana all around me, and drawing in the prana from the plants and everything around, and that made it very fresh and present and really wonderful. So I just thought I'd share that, because that just happened this morning.
Yeah. Be ready. Jesus said, "God comes like a thief in the night." You're never ready for when and how God's going to pop in. So just be ready, and always be listening. And Another thing I found is that my mind, my good old faithful stalwart mind, and this may be a guy thing, I'm not quite sure, but it edits out a lot of stuff. And I found that sometimes that I'll be doing the Om technique, I'll be hearing a sound, and all of a sudden it'll expand into a sound which sounds like one of the sounds of one of the chakras. I think, my gosh, I think that's the third chakra. And my mind says, oh, you mean that? I've been editing that out for years. You know, it wasn't listening. It was canceling it out.
I think that's a
so it's a process. It's a process of tuning in.
No, this has been absolutely wonderful. Absolutely. And really thank you for staying so long with us. I mean, you can tell we just love to have visitors. And if this is the way we can have them, we'll have them.
Okay.
Before we start to get off of here, though, you please ask your wife to come back and get in this picture.
Okay, Savitri, you got to come back. You got to come back and say hi.
Does anybody else have anything, last words you want to say to Sudarshan and or Savitri, who is going to appear?
She's on her way.
And there's lots of thank yous, and please come back in the chat box too, just to let you know, Sudarshan. People would really appreciate it.
And we had one in particular, Kim said, talked about how what you said about being protected is something that she heard herself, for herself, on a walk or something recently. So, like I said, it was just perfect. Hi, Savitri.
Good to see you.
So good to see you.
Look well.
Thank you. I like my long hair.
Wow. We're all getting long.
I don't do very much these days, but I'm growing hair really good here.
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks very full and you know, like it's got a lot of, you know, it's like the yogis, you know, the energy in the hair. It's got that pranic field about it.
Well, we literally have, just because Savitri is a Texan way back when she was, and we literally had people on this morning from Waco, from Austin, and then some other states too. California, Sam and Pam is still here and things, but some of the other Texas folks said, I'm just going to read them. Sudarshan, thank you. Loved it. Very enlightening, from Victoria. And she put her name, so I'll say it. Another one in Austin.
Hi, Victoria. I saw your name on there. It was good to see.
Yeah, she may have left now, but Ellen down in Austin said, Sudarshan, this has been so wonderful. Please join us again sometime. And then Kim is in Austin. She said some other things, but namaste, y'all, she said. And then thank you. Many golden nuggets of wisdom I heard today. Love to Savitri. So that's in there as well. And then Hugh, he's one of our teachers. We have a bunch of teachers, one in Houston, one here in Dallas and around. And Hugh says, just thank you so much for being with us. So lots of good Texas energy coming to you guys for clear air.
Okay, good.
For lack of wildfires. You can have some fires somewhere when it gets cold.
We've got another one just to the north of us. It's the old one called the North Complex, but it has kicked up a little bit. And it's not a threat, but it's sending smoke down. And also, do put me on your rotation, however you want to, and stay in touch, and we'll try to do it again.
We will. Look at this beautiful pair of souls here. Thank you, both of you. So, Savitri, you little devil, you. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget, next week is Jyotishan Devi and lots more going on. So we'll see everyone somewhere soon.
Okay.
Jai Guru.
Bye. God bless everybody.